Hi everybody, this is Crystal. So today I'm going to show you how to make this cardigan here. Now you've seen what it looked like on me. I am 5'3", barely. So you've seen where it landed. You can make it shorter. It's very easy to customize. You can leave the pockets off. You can make short sleeves. You can make longer sleeves than me. I'll give you all the measurements. You can make it this part here thicker to where it will button up if you want it to. Mine probably would button up, but I chose not to put no buttons on it. Now it's made to be a bit oversized, but of course you could probably make it fit you tighter just by the measurements. But let me get my tape measure and I'll give you all the measurements. Okay, not lots of room here on my desk to show you, but okay, first it's got 2 pockets which you can leave off. It's actually dual pockets, which means right here this opens up, and as you can see the front panel does have holes, so you wouldn't want to put anything small here, but you can go, it's closed at the bottom, and you could put like your phone there if you wanted to. And also this opens up and it is closed there because it's double layered, so you could put smaller things in there if that's what you want to do. So that's how the pockets are done, but like I said, you can leave them off. I know not everybody likes pockets, and those can be adjusted to where your hands fall. Okay, so sleeve length, let's start with that. Sleeve length, I'm going to measure the sleeve not from where I started the sleeve, because part of the top portion hangs over to form your sleeve. I'm going to give you a measurement from the collar. Now, yeah, I'm going to give you the measure from the collar all the way down my sleeve. That way, because like I said, part of this hangs over and becomes your sleeve, so because it's oversized. 26 inches approximately for mine. Now if I just want to measure it where I started crocheting my sleeve, remember though, some of this is part of your sleeve too, but the part that I made double crochet rows for my sleeve is almost 16 inches. Okay, pocket is folded. It's approximately 9.5 inches long, approximately 7 inches wide. That's adjustable. Length from the shoulder down to the bottom, 32 inches, and across the back, gonna have to measure off camera. Okay, the back panel was about 27 inches. So, and then it has this collar area here which folds. I'll tell you in the video, you can make that bigger if you want, make it come out more. You can add buttons if you want. The size of buttons that I use on my pockets here are 1 1/8 inch buttons, which I did purchase at Walmart a while ago. So I think I gave you all the measurements needed, and you've seen what it looked like on me. Even, you know, because it's meant to be oversized, but you know, it doesn't have to be. So it's made with 3 panels. You do the back panel first, and then we work 2 side panels, sew them together, and then we will do the collar, and then we'll do the sleeves separate, or sew them on, and then we will do the pockets. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how I measured and what yarn I used. Okay, for this project I used James C. Brett Marble Chunky Glamour. This is a bulky number 5, 100% almost 100% acrylic yarn, almost. You don't have to use this yarn, you don't have to. But it is 295 yards, and it took me almost all of 5. So I'm going to say you're going to need about 1,400 yards of a bulky 5 to make it the size that I'm making. You can use a 4-weight, you just have to go by the measurements. And if you're going to make it bigger than mine, you'll probably, you'll need more yardage. If you're going to make it smaller, you'll need less yardage. The color I used is MCG4. It was a pretty red and black. And then I'm going to be using a size K, which is a 6.5 millimeter. Okay, I can give you a swatch. I used double crochets to swatch it. So 14 double crochets across equal 6 inches. And 8 rows of double crochet down equals 6 inches. So that's my gauge. 14 double crochets in a row was 6 inches, and 8 rows of double crochet was 6 inches. So you can swatch it out if you do swatches by that. So we start with the back panel first, and the back panel, your chain that you start with is the length. So you can see the length, the rows are done vertical. So we start with the length. So you make your chain however long you want your piece to be, and you start from the middle of your shoulder to measure all the way down. And now it can be done in any even number of stitches. It doesn't matter as long as your chain is an even number. I started with a chain of 82 stitches for mine to make it my length. Now that was from the middle of my shoulder. I measured a chain all the way down to where I wanted my cardigan to be, and I added just a couple more chains because sometimes it shrinks up a little bit when you start to do that. So any number of chains, and like I said, I did 82 for mine, and all it is rows of double crochet for the back. Remember, this vertical rows, this will be the length. You double crochet in the 4th from the hook, and double crochet 1 double crochet in every stitch until you get to the end of the row. I'm just showing you on a smaller scale. And then what you would do is I had 80 stitches. However many chains you started with, now at the end of your row you'll have 2 less. So I started with 82. I have 80 now. So I'm going to keep 80 the whole time on the back. Chain 1 and turn. Start again in this very first stitch here. Always start in that very first stitch. Double crochet. And 1 double crochet in every stitch. So it's just rows. The back panel is just rows of double crochet back and forth, back and forth. My size, I always had 80 stitches at the end of every row. You want yours longer or shorter, remember you'll keep the same stitch count the whole way. And this is the length that we're doing. It's not the width. So rows, double crochet back and forth. Now you want to do that until you get a certain width. Now let me explain how I came up with that to make it oversized. So I looked on in Google at ladies sizes. I always do that. That's how I determine sizing. And I went with a size large. Now it said a size large, woman's chest area is between 38 and 40 inches measured for, like, I looked up t-shirt sizes is what I did for women, and the average charts that I saw was for a large was between 38 and 40 inches. So since we're only doing the back panel, I took the biggest number, which was 40 inches, and I cut it in half. So that made 20 inches for the back panel, but I wanted it oversized, so I added 7 more inches. So my back panel measures 27 inches. I hope that makes sense. So if you are, if the woman, you want to make it a lot bigger, say you look up your sizing and it says 50 inches. Okay, where you're working your back panel, you take your 50 inches and you would divide it by 2, which would be 25. But then you'd want to add 7 more inches to it. So you would want to make your back panel 32 inches. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. It's really easy if you think about it. That's how I did it. Now, if you don't want to make it oversized, you can use the correct measurements. It'll just be tighter on your body. Like I said, I took a lady's large was 40 inches, and I divided it by 2 because that would have been my back panel. So that would make 20. You know, I could have used that. It just wouldn't, it would be a tight fitting cardigan. That's not what I wanted. So I added 7 more to make it nice and loose and baggy and comfortable feeling. But you can do it either way. I hope that makes sense. So, and then you keep doing your rows until you get to the inches, the rows I just showed you how to do, until your back panel is as many inches as you figured up you needed. I did 27 inches, which equaled 38 rows for me. Okay, so now we are going to start on the side panels. And you want to start with the chain, the same number that you started with for your back piece. So I chained 82 for mine, back piece. So I'm chaining 82 for my panel. And we will be making 2 panels the exact same. So what we're going to do, I have my chain of 82, and we'll start off with by putting a double crochet in the 4th stitch from the hook. 1, 2, 3, and working 1 double crochet in every stitch across until we get to the end of the row. Just like that. So 1 double in every stitch. Okay, I've come to the end of row 1, and I'll have a total of 80 stitches, which is the same that I had for the back part of my cardigan. Now we're going to start row 2. Row 2 and 3 are actually the repeat rows for the side panels. Very easy to do. So we are going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now we are going to put a double crochet into this very first stitch here. And we're also going to put a double crochet into the next stitch. So that's 2 double crochets right there in a row. And now what we're going to do is chain 1, skip 1, and double into the next. So we're skipping this one and double crocheting into the next. And that's what we're going to repeat to the end now. Chain 1, skip 1, and double into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, double into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, and double into the next. So we're going to repeat this pattern of the chain 1, skip 1, double into the next until we get to the end of row 2. So that's what it looks like. Remember, we started out with 2 double crochets in a row, but the rest is chain 1, skip 1, double into the next. I'm coming to the end of row 2. I double crochet, chain 1, and I have 2 stitches left here because this chain 3 here, or this little chain here, does count as a stitch. So I'm skipping this, and then I'm going to double crochet into the last stitch. And now, if you count every double crochet and every chain 1 space, you'll still have 80 stitches. That's counting the chain 1 spaces. So now we're going to start row 3. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work. And we are going to start off by putting a double crochet into that very first stitch. Now we're going to put a double crochet into the chain 1 space. So you just go right through the space, like right through it, and a double crochet. And then we're going to double crochet into the next double crochet into the next chain 1 space, so right through that space, double crochet into the next double crochet, double crochet into the next chain 1 space. So that's the repeat for row 3. 1 double crochet in every double crochet and 1 double crochet in every chain 1 space until we get to the end of the row. Just like that. So pretty easy. Okay, so I have made it to the end of row 3 of my side panel, 80 stitches still, and now I'm just going to repeat rows 2 and 3. So to start row 4, which will be a repeat of row 3, we start off with a double crochet into the very first stitch and a double crochet into the next stitch, and then we start doing our repeat of chain 1, skip 1, double crochet into the next. So we're just going to keep repeating rows 2 and 3 for our side panel. Now you probably wonder how many rows you need to do. Well, that depends on what size back that you made. So I'm going to go ahead and show you right now of what you need to do to determine how big you need to make your panels. So here is my back piece. And as I mentioned, I did 38 rows. You want to make sure that you end in an even number of rows. So I did 38. And what you want to do is you want to leave 12 rows unaccounted for, which will be your next space. So if I did, you got to do a little math for yours if you're not doing the same size of mine. If I've done 38 rows on my back piece, which I did, and I want to leave 12 rows plain, nothing on them, that would leave me with 26 rows unaccounted for. So what I would need to do is, because 38 minus 12 is 26. So what I would need to do is take that 26 and divide it by 2, which would equal 13. So that means I would need to make one panel 13 rows and the other panel 13 rows. And I hope that makes sense. I already have one panel done. Now, the panel probably will look small in comparison to the jacket. It's going to. Don't worry about that, because that's not all we're going to do. So here is one panel with my 13 rows done. And here's my back piece. I'm working on my other panel. Now when I make my other panel, it's, I'm going to leave 12 rows here, a void, which will be for the neck area. It'll probably come to be about here. And it looks small, and that's fine, because that's not all we're going to do. We're going to add more rows later to go up around the neck area and come down to kind of act, I don't know, maybe as a collar, some kind of like as a collar, but not so, I don't know, I can't really explain it, but it will make it thicker and closer together. But there still will be a gap, because it's not going to be a cardigan that can be buttoned. It's just kind of an oversized cardigan that you just flop on and wear and lounge around in. So, but don't worry if it appears small. So you just do the math like I said, depending on how large you made your back panel, and that's how many rows you need to do your side panels in. So for my side panels, I'm doing 13 rows for each panel. As you can see, this one's finished, it's 13 rows. And then I'll do 13 rows for my second panel, and that'll leave me 12 rows void, which will be for my neck area. Then we're going to sew it all together, and then we'll start adding more rows up around the neck and down the sides to make it take up some more of this void. I hope that all makes sense, but I'm going to continue now with my other panel, and then we'll start sewing it together. So I've got both panels done. Now, I do want to mention that when you're making your panels and you did the math, like I told you how to do it, and you so happen to end up your mathematic equation ended you in a row that was chain spaces. That can happen. I mean, that will happen to some people. What you want to do is not do that last row. Leave it at a row of double crochet. So make sure that you end in a row of double crochet. Don't add any more. Take away that row, so your other row would be exposed. I hope that makes sense. And when you tie off, I always leave a long tail for sewing. And I have both of my panels done. Now I'm going to be sewing with a yarn needle, and I'm going to be slip stitching both ways is how I'm going to be doing it. So here is my back piece. First, we're going to mark off some stitch markers with some stitch markers. So I'm going to start on mine. Doesn't matter, whatever the top is to you, whatever the bottom is. The back piece probably looks identical on both sides, so the back doesn't matter to me. What I'm going to do, or what side I use on the back, doesn't matter to me, is mark off my neck hole. Now remember, it's 12 regardless of what size you do. 12. So I did 38 rows on the back, which means I have 13 rows of panels on this side and 13 rows of panels on this side. So I want to count in 13 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then the next row I will put a stitch marker, because that's going to be my neck hole. Now if you want, you can go ahead and start and counting that one that you just put the stitch marker in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And mark the 12th one with a stitch marker. So we have 12 rows now. For our neck. If you count the rows, including the stitch markers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's what you need to have for your neck. That's where you need to put your stitch markers. Now this over here is for the side panels. Now mine happen to be equal, so I do have 13 rows on both sides. As I mentioned, if you happen to end up on a row of chain spaces, I said to take that row out and just be short one. So you will be short one on each side, which is fine. It's not going to be a big deal. I mean, it's going to make up for, I mean, we're going to go around and around it, so you're not going to be able to tell. So we also need to mark off for our armholes. Now this is the part that you want to measure. Kind of, what we're going to do first is, before we mark off the armholes, I guess I jumped ahead of myself. Let's sew on our panels, just the top part of our panels. Now we want to sew our pieces. It may look like your panels are short. That's fine. It's just because they're the same size. It's just because they're not stretched. We want to sew together backwards, so when we will flip it inside out, the seam won't be visible. So I'm going to take my panels where the row of double crochet is facing the wrong direction, and that's how I'm going to sew mine up. But also I want to make sure the row where we did the chain spaces, we started with 2 double crochets, remember, is at the top. So the 2 double crochet chain space rows have to be at the top of your work. It'll be at your shoulder area, and you want your double crochets to be facing the wrong direction. So this one will get sewed on this way, and then the other one, I'll take a look at it. Here my double crochets are, here I got my 2 double crochets in a row on my chain spaces, so I know that needs to go to the top. And I want my double crochets to be facing the wrong direction, and they are, so this one is going to be sewed this way. And then when we flip them wrong side out, after we sew the sides up later, the double crochets will be facing the right side. So we'll go ahead and start sewing up this panel first. Now I'm going to use a yarn needle to sew up the top. Now since mine is measured correctly, like I said, it was even, I know mine's going to go not on top of it. It's only going to go to the row right next to it. Now remember, if you had to leave a row off, you'll have one extra row before the chain space. But remember, it's not a big deal. So right there is where mine's going to be sewn all the way across the top. Now how I'm going to sew it, I'm going to use my long tail that I left. Yarn needle. And I'm going to neatly sew it back and forth through the front panel. Make sure you don't get over into your neck hole area. And the back piece. Back and forth is a method that I'm using. I'm not going around and around. I'm going to use the back and forth method. And I'm going to sew it all the way across as neatly as possible until I get to the other side. No one really likes sewing stuff together. I know I don't really like it. It's not the funnest part. But a lot of times when you make garments, it's best to make garments. I don't know. I usually make mine where they have to be sewn together. Although I don't like doing it. I do. So as you're working across, try to keep your rows lined up. So when you get over here, you're not like, way off. So if it helps, you can pin them with some pins. But otherwise, just kind of make sure you're keeping your rows lined up so things are working and lining up correctly for you. And I'm going to do this all the way across, like I said, until I get to over here to the end. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other panel. Just sew up the top. And then we'll mark off some armholes. And then we'll slip stitch the whole sides. But that'll go a little bit quicker. Okay, so moving right along, I have both of my top panels sewed. Let's look at it here. So here they are sewed. They're still facing the wrong side. Now remember, we will have 12 stitches here, but if you did end up in that odd number like I talked about and you had to remove a row to end on a double crochet row, you'll actually have 14. It's fine. Either way will work. Whether you come up with 12 like I do or 14 because your panels didn't line up correctly. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It's just you just had a different number than I did. Now what you want to do is try on your piece so you can mark off your sleeve hole. That's the best way to do it. So try it on and make sure this line lines up in the middle of your shoulder. And then mark off an area for kind of pinch it together and put a stitch marker there to where, it feels kind of loose on your arms, because the sleeves are going to be a little bit big. There's not going to be much decreasing in the sleeves. They're just big, going to be big overall sleeves. So for mine, I left 7 inches for my sleeves. You do as many as you need. Maybe you need small, maybe you need 5, maybe you need 10. It's completely up to you. But remember, however big this opening is going to be how big the opening is almost the whole way down. It's not going to be much different. So once you get your sleeves marked off on both sides, we're going to slip stitch it together. Don't turn your piece, leave it the wrong side still. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up to my stitch marker of my sleeve. That way I know I get the exact, I'm starting down here, and that way I know I get the, it's all going to line up correctly. So I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to use my hook and I'm going to start slip stitching from the bottom up to where I get my sleeves marked off. And then I'll leave that part open for now. So you start at the bottom. Make sure you grab the first stitch on your front panel and the first stitch on your back panel. Remember though, we're still working the wrong side. Go in, chain one, and now we're going to slip stitch all the way up. We're going to go into the next stitch on the front panel and the next stitch on the back panel, slip stitch. The next stitch on the front panel, the next stitch on the back panel, and slip stitch. And we're going to do this all the way up until we get to where we marked off for our armholes. That's why it's important to put stitch markers where you want your armholes. Make sure the armholes are the exact same on both sides. Count your stitches and make sure that they are the same number of stitches that you have left open for each armhole on both sides, so you don't come out with wonky looking armholes. So I'm going to continue this until I get up to my stitch marker where my armhole is. I'm just slip stitching it together. Okay, so I tried mine on. I flipped mine right side out. I have both my sides up. I tried it on. Seams are good. Fits fine, or as it's supposed to. It's a little oversized, remember, but my armholes fit fine. Both my seams look nice. I have the right side facing me now. Now let's work on this collar area, and what we're going to do is start down here on your first flap. We'll work our way up, all the way up to the first flap. We're going to go around the collar and then back down the other flap to the other side, and we're going to continue doing that back and forth and back and forth. Now the first round is going to be back post double crochet. After that, it will be a regular double crochets. So we want to go ahead and remember, our work is facing right side now. We flipped it after I was done sewing it up. I flipped it right side out so you can see the seams, like I said, are nice and pretty clean. I like that. Clean seams. So we're going to start down here, right side of our work facing us. Start in the first stitch. Go through. Now the number of stitches that you have really doesn't matter anymore. There's no multiple now anymore. So I'm not really going to give you the numbers I have total around my neck and back down my sides, because yours could be different than mine. And it's fine. Whatever number you have, it doesn't matter. It's going to work the same. So we're going to start in that first stitch. We're going to chain one, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to double crochet into that first stitch. Just a double crochet. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work a back post double crochet in every stitch. So what that means is we're going to yarn over like we're going to do a double crochet, but we're going to go from behind the stitch and around the post, and then we're going to do our double crochet, and that's going to make a back post double crochet. And we're going to do that in every stitch until we get up to the collar area. Now this is the only row that we're going to do the back post stitch on. Only reason being, I'll show you here in just a second. We're going to work one back post double crochet in every stitch until we get up to the collar. Of course we won't do back post there, but I'll show you what we're going to do. Now I've done a few back post double crochets, and as you can see, it creates a ridge. That ridge is just simply for decor to separate the main portion of the jacket from this little area that we're putting around, like collar area around the neck and that it's also going to go down the sides. It's just like a little separation piece. It puts that ridge there. Purely decor, I guess, but it's all in the details, right? So I'm going to continue putting one back post double crochet all the way up here, my first panel, until I get to where my neck hole is. We're going to do something a little bit different there, and I will meet back up with you when we get there, or when I get there. I have made it all the way up my first side here with my back post double crochet, and now I'm at my neckline. So you want to go all the way up until you get to your last stitch here on the side, and you back post double crochet, and now you can see here's the neckline. Now if you have 12 or 14 spaces, it doesn't matter. What you want to do is 2 double crochets to each one of those rows. I mean, whether you have 12 or 14 rows, that doesn't matter. You want to do 2 double crochets to each of those rows. So I kind of just wiggle my way in, or the best that you can. They're just regular double crochets, no posts. 2 to each of those rows. And if you can't get it exactly, that's fine. Just evenly space out the double crochets the best that you can. That's all you can really do, is just do your best to space them, because it's kind of hard up here along the sides to tell really where you're going. So you do this all the way across the collar area. At the top is where we're at. Remember, these are just regular doubles. They are not back post doubles. We don't do them at the top here. So I'm going to do this all the way across until I get across my neck area. So I've made it across the top with my row double crochet, and now I'm going to start working down my other side. We're going to be working our back post double crochets again to give it that little ridge. So kind of go into that first one here, back post double, and back post double, and every stitch all the way down. Now you can see why I said the stitch count doesn't matter anymore, and I'm not even going to count mine, because up here it's so hard to tell if you're getting the same amount of stitches as me, and ours could be different, and it's really, like I said, it does not matter if it's different. It's going to work regardless of how many stitches you have there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out this row here of 1 back post double crochet in every stitch until I get to the bottom of my work. And you can see now we're creating the ridge on the opposite side. Okay, I'm coming to the end here. I had 2 stitches left. I did a back post double crochet, and then in my last one here I'm going to end with a double crochet into the, just a regular double crochet into the last stitch. Okay, so now what we're going to do from here on out, remember stitch count doesn't matter, is we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn, and now all we're going to do is double crochets. We're going to do 1 double crochet in every stitch all the way up this side, all the way around the collar area that we just put double crochets in, and then all the way back down this side that we put the back post double crochets in, down to here. And then we repeat it. We chain 1 and we turn, and then we go double crochet in every stitch all the way back up around the collar area, all the way back down here again. Now we can repeat, you can repeat as many rows of double crochet as you want, for as thick as you'd like this piece to be, and for as thick as you'd like your collar to kind of fold over. I'm not sure how many rows I'm actually going to do, but I'm going to start off. You start by chaining 1, and double crochet into that very first stitch, and double crochet in every single stitch all the way up this side, all the way around the collar, and all the way back down until you reach the end of the other side. And then you repeat it again. Remember, you can do that for as thick as you want this to be. It's your sweater. You make it look like how you want. You want one row of double crochet, that's fine. You want 5 rows of double crochet, whatever you want. So I'm going to continue back and forth rows from the bottom all the way up to one side, around the collar, all the way down to the other side. And then I am going to chain 1, turn, and repeat double crochets again, all the way up the other side, all the way around the collar, and all the way back down the other side. And I will let you know whenever I get done how many total rows I decide to do for mine. But if I flip it over to the right side, that's what it starts to look like. All right, okay. I'm going to keep going. So what I have done for mine, you can do yours differently. I did the row of back post double crochet, and then I did 2 rows of regular double crochet, and then I tied off. So that's what mine looks like. If you want to add more rows of double crochet on both sides, and maybe add buttons and use the double crochet holes over here as buttonholes, that's completely up to you. I'm not going to add no buttons on mine, but that's something that you can do. Now let's start on the sleeves. I have one sleeve done, and the sleeve is actually very easy because there is no decreasing. It's all the same size. So it's kind of bigger around your wrist. I wanted it to be like that. So we'll go ahead and start here. Now both sleeves are made the exact same. So, and they're very easy to do. They're all just double crochet rows. So make sure that you have the same number of stitches on each side of your sleeves. Remember, we talked about that when we sewed it together. So I'm just going to start here in the first stitch, kind of down here in the corner somewhere. Okay, so there's the seam where we sewed it together. I'm going to start in the stitch here after that seam. But it really doesn't matter where you start. It's just I'm going to kind of start where the seam's at, so the seam of my sleeve will kind of run along the seam of my cardigan. You want to chain 1, go back into that same stitch that you started in, and double crochet. And now here's the seam of the cardigan. Don't do anything there. Just come over here to this next stitch and double crochet. And now we are going to work 1 double crochet in every stitch all the way around. So it's super easy. It's just rows of double crochet for the sleeves. And you can make them for however long your arms are. Everybody's arms are different lengths. Maybe you like shorter sleeves. Maybe you want 3/4 sleeves. Maybe you want really long sleeves that you can roll up. It's, you know, it's very versatile that you can do all those things. So I'm going to continue around until I get back to my starting point. I'm just putting 1 double crochet in every stitch. Well, let me show you when we get up here to the seam of the shoulder what we do there. Actually, don't do anything different. You just double crochet in every stitch. So here's the seam where we sewed our top together. Just double crochet in each stitch that's available there, all the way around until you get back to your starting point. Alright, so I have made it back to my starting point of my row 1 of my sleeve. And in case you were interested, I did have 34 stitches on mine. Remember, mine was approximately 7 inches, but it doesn't matter how many stitches you have. Just make sure it's the same on both sleeves. So once you get done with round 1, you end by slip stitching into your first double crochet, chain 1, go back into that same stitch there, that very first double crochet, and double crochet into it. And then we're just going to repeat. We're going to go around again. 1 double crochet in every stitch. So this is just the way the sleeve is done, the entire way down. No decreasing, no adjusting the size. You make it to your desired length, however long you want it. Now I gave you the measurements of my sleeve, and you've seen how far down it went on me, but I suggest just trying it on, every so often, and that's what I did until I got it the correct length. So I'm going to continue doing rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of double crochet until I get to where I want it to end. And then I'll do a finishing round of single crochet. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same number of rows on this sleeve as I did on this. Remember, it's exactly the same. I said I had 34 stitches. I will always have 34 stitches every round. However many stitches you have, you will always have that many stitches on your round. It won't change. The sleeve is the same size all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and work until I make it the same size as this one. And I will meet you at the end when it's time to do the last row. So you make yours as long as you want, and I'll catch right back up with you. So I have done a total of 20 rows of double crochet for my sleeve. But remember, you make your sleeve however long it is to fit your arm, whatever length you want on your arm. It doesn't have to be just like mine. But what I'm going to do now that I've finished my 20th row, I went ahead and ended by slip stitching into my first double crochet. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to go back into that first stitch and single crochet, and I'm just going to work 1 single crochet in every stitch. So this would be round 21 of mine, but if you're doing just the last round of yours, would be 1 single crochet in every stitch all the way around. And then when you get back to the beginning, you want to end by slip stitching into your first single crochet, and then you want to tie off and hide that tail, and then we'll start on the pockets. Exciting. And then that'll be it. The end is near. Okay, here's what we got so far, coming right along. I've already made 1 pocket, as you can see, and then I'm going to show you how to make the other one. And then they're both made exactly the same. So, but if you want to omit the pockets, please feel free to do it. This is what it looks like without pockets. This is what it looks like with pockets. Want 1 pocket, want 2 pockets, it's completely up to you, but I'm just excited that we're nearing the end. Let's get started on okay, now for the pocket. You seen how big mine are? How big mine are now? I started with a chain of 58. So for the pocket, it does fold. Once it's made, we'll fold it kind of like that, and then it will have a flap over. So, but you can make yours any size you want, and any number of chains. But my size is I chained 58, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a double crochet in the 4th stitch from my hook. And then I'm going to do a double crochet in every stitch for the length of my chain. So it's just a row of double crochet, just like this. Right, I've made it to the end of row 1 of my pocket, and now all we're going to do is chain 1 and turn. You should have, if you're following along with me, you'll have 56 stitches now. And we are going to put the double crochet into that very first stitch. And now all it is 1 double crochet in every stitch. So the pocket's just rows of double crochet. 9 rows to be exact is what I did. I did 9 rows. That way it fit where I wanted it to fit. And also the odd number row is where, since I had odd number, I was able to put the button right in the middle on that middle row there. But like I said, you can make yours bigger, smaller, no pockets. Just make sure you line it up, and wherever you put it, make sure it's going to fit. Remember, it is going to be like this. It's going to fold like that, and then we sew the bottom, sew the sides, and the top flips over too, and then we add the button to the middle row. So I'm going to continue. Remember, we make 2 pockets exactly the same if you're following along with me. So I'm going to continue my rows of double crochet until I get a total of 9. I'm on row 2 now. So I'll meet back up with you, and then we'll sew it on the jacket. Okay, so I have my 9 rows completed, and I just went ahead and tied off. You can make yours bigger and smaller. Remember, now I highly recommend you try the jacket on and determine where your hands fall to where you need to sew your jacket. Like I said, you could have made your jacket shorter than mine, and where you put your pockets is probably going to be different than where I put mine. It just all depends on where your hands fall. So but once you figure out where you want to sew your pocket, make sure you sew them both in the exact same spot on both sides. So take your piece and fold it like this. And what I did on mine, remember, you can be different than me. I left 8 rows of double crochets as a flap. So I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, like that. And then you want to sew it. I sewed mine. This is just me for my arms where I needed mine to hit. I took these chain spaces and I counted up 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I sewed on the 10th one, so you couldn't see the 10th chain spaces. And I also sewed on these double crochet rows. So here's my seam right here. Here's a double crochet row, chain space row. I sewed on this double crochet row. And then over here is our back post double crochet edging. Here's a double crochet row, chain space row, and then I sewed on this double crochet row. So it's centered, mine's centered. So you want to make sure you try to get yours centered. Now it might be best if you pin it down into place with some pins. Of course, I got the smallest pins known to man for some reason, but just kind of pin it along. Remember, we're only going to pin it to the first flap because we're not going to sew it to our back. So I'm going to pin it along the row here where it falls for my hands, so it's easier for me to sew it that way. That one is broke. Goodness gracious. I guess I'm off to Amazon after this video to buy some longer pins. More sturdy ones too. There we go. That'll work. You can pin it all the way across if you want. Now all it is just sewing it. I'm going to be using a yarn needle and a piece of yarn to sew. And it's easy to sew it on. It just takes a little time because you want to make sure you do it as neat as possible. So, get your piece of yarn and a yarn needle. I got yarn needles laying everywhere. Okay. Let me move my camera where you can see. You can pin the sides up too if it's easier for you to do that. So, like I mentioned, I'm going to leave 8 8 double crochet for the flap. So I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going to start sewing it up after that. Remember, we're only going through this top panel. And I'm just going to go right along the edge and sewing it back and forth. And you want to grab this when it gets to it, right there. Now I'm not going over and over and over, I'm going back and forth along that row of double crochet. That's my tail there. And I'm going to come back up and go through both pieces of the pocket. Remember how we folded it? Go through one piece of the pocket and then through the other piece of the pocket. I'm going right along the edge of it and then back down again through one piece of the pocket and the other piece of the pocket along that double crochet row is where I'm sewing mine. We're going to do this all the way down until we get down here to the bottom, and then we're going to sew the bottom up and the other side. Just make sure you're getting both pieces, and make sure you want to make sure that you're sewing it on pretty good, because if you're going to want to hold your phone in it and whatnot, it will put some weight on it, and you don't want your phone to fall out. So, you know, you have to make sure that it's sewn good. No one wants to lose their phone in a tragic accident like that because we didn't sew our pocket on good. Sometimes you can go across it twice, you know, just to sew it up twice just to be certain, but that's up to you. So I'm going to keep going back and forth just like this until I get down to the bottom. All right, I made it down to the bottom. Now we're going to sew along the bottom to close the bottom shut. That way it makes it where it's double pocketed. So I didn't tie off. What I'm going to do is just go through right at the bottom and grab like that through both pieces of the pocket now at the bottom. And this is a part also you want to make sure that you do nice and tight. That way we don't want to lose something valuable. And make sure on this one that you're going through both, the whole bottom of the pocket, both pieces. You know, it's folded there, but go through both folded pieces. That gives it extra security. Extra security doesn't hurt anything. We're going to do this all the way across the bottom, and then we'll work back up our way back up this side, doing this side the same way. It's very important that even though it's folded in half, you're going through it like that. We just can't have anything falling out. And so all you really need to do is just kind of take your time and sew it all the way around. Nice and tight, nice and neat. And if you don't feel like it's strong enough, your sew job, to support the things that you want to put in it, your pockets, I would highly recommend sewing twice down it. Especially if you're going to be putting a phone or something in it, that would probably be the best. At least sew the bottom twice here. I just keep mentioning the phone because they're super expensive. I know how tragic that would be. I know how bad it is to drop a phone and break it. It's no fun. So I would probably go across my bottom twice after I get it all sewed up. I'll probably go just across the bottom again, because I think I sewed up my sides pretty well. But if I give this to my sister, I don't want her dropping her phone. She'd be mad at me. Make sure you're staying lined up with the row that you're supposed to be lined up with so your pocket isn't crooked. So I'm just going to continue sewing the bottom on all the way across here until I get to the other side. And then when I make it to the other side, I'm just going to sew it up. Make sure you get both pieces of the pocket. Sew it up until here, and then we can sew on a button. And then hide some tails. And so I got my pocket finished, and I sewed in all my tails, and here is my flap. So last thing I have to do is sew on my button. So I have my button here, and like I said, I did 9 rows, so I'm going to sew mine. I'm going to sew it right here on the inside, and then it'll button 2 in between these double crochets on the other side. On the middle row, so 1 right here, just try to get it equal with my other one. And then when you pull it down, it'll button through these double crochet rows. Now you can use regular thread and needle if you want. You can use the yarn that you used. I couldn't find any color. I couldn't find my black thread, regular thread, so I'm just using a matching piece of 4-weight regular 4-weight yarn. This is some Super Saver that I had, and I'm going to sew my button on now. Remember, we're just sewing it on this one panel here, and you just sew it on like a regular button. And remember, you want to do your other pocket the same way as this one. Get it sewed on. I know you're not supposed to make knots, but I make them. So I'm going to finish sewing on my button, and then I'm going to look, see if I have any more other tails to hide. Now once I get this sewed on, this will flap over, and you can use that row of double crochet there as your buttonhole. Awesome. All right, I finished my cardigan. It's a lot of work, but I got it done, and I cannot wait to see how you do yours. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope you were able to follow along okay. Remember, if you make this, I want to see a picture of it. Come follow me on Instagram. Make this, tag me in it. Show me how you make yours. You're going to make it shorter? You're going to make it longer? No pockets? I'm excited to see what kind of yarn you use. All kinds of stuff. You're going to make yours button? It's so customizable. I can't wait to see what yours looks like. So thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, check out my hundreds of other crochet tutorials, and until next time, have a good day, and please stay safe.